So, we've got 9. Count them. 9 games on tonight. Um, if you hear any banging and thrashing in the background, they're working on the house, but just for fun, you can pretend that I've started trapping Connor McDavid fans that want to see him win the Hart somewhere in my home. Just fighting for air, something like that, just for fun. Just gotta have fun with it. I did watch a video this morning. Emma Blackery is one of the channels I follow. She's got like 1.5 million subscribers, so me giving her a shout out really doesn't make any difference to her. But she was talking about negative feedback she's had and the impact it's had on her and stuff. And I thought it was interesting because there are days where, you know, it just kind of gets me. Like yesterday was an example. Not today. I'm talking about it today because it didn't get me today. It got me yesterday. But, you know, there are days where you just see all these negative comments. You're like, really? Say that kind of crap to people? Man, that's just... Anyways, let's get on with it. Carolina, 34-31-11. They're 5-5-0 in their last 10. They've won their last 3 in a row because the games don't really matter. They're in against New Jersey. New Jersey's 39-28-8. They're 6-4 in their last 10. They've won their last 2. Carolina on the road is 16-5. New Jersey at home is 19-14-3. Kincaid starting for New Jersey. No confirmation on who's starting for Carolina. Probably Cam Ward. Carolina's 7 points back of the number 2 wild card. New Jersey is that number 2 wild card. They'll be playing without Patrick Maroon tonight. And as the number 2 wild card, there's 3 points behind Philly, who is the number 1 wild card. Jersey right now has played well over the last few weeks. But their issue is that there's teams that are sitting ahead of them that have also been playing relatively well. And so their ability to make up space on the teams ahead of them becomes more and more unlikely because we've only got a handful of games left. We're almost to the playoffs. Can you believe we're almost to the playoffs? I can't believe we're almost to the playoffs. Carolina is an interesting case in that if they win tonight, they move within 5 points to that second wild card. If they win in regulation, if they win in overtime, they move within 6 points to the wild card. I'm half ready to say, you know what, they'll probably win it because Carolina has this thing they do at the end of the year where they win a bunch of games that shouldn't matter, and they make it so it looks like things are starting to matter, and then they miss the playoffs anyways. So I would not be entirely surprised to see Carolina win this one tonight. And that won't make Devils fans panic necessarily, although Devils fans are looking over their shoulder, and the Devils team should be looking over their shoulder because 1 point behind them, with 1 game in hand, is the Florida Panthers, who are another team showing no signs of slowing down, really. They've had a couple of bobbles along the way, but really they've played very, very well. And so New Jersey, despite the fact that they're playing very well right now, still has to be concerned about their playoff lives. And this is where they could use a really good game from Hall, an excellent game from Kincaid, and there you go. But we'll see what they do tonight. Islanders. The Islanders are 31-35-10 overall. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They're in against the Ottawa Senators, who are 26-38-11. They're 3-6-5 in their last 10. They've lost their last 5 in a row. The Islanders on the road are 14-18-6. The Senators at home are 15-17-6. So there's not a whole lot to choose between the two. It's kind of a pick your poison game. You know, personally, I think Ottawa probably wins it because they're at home, but they've lost 5 in a row, and I believe a few of those have been at home. So it's really hard to get a read on where either team's going. You've got the Carlson rumors with Ottawa. You've got the Tavares cloud hanging over the Islanders. You've got Ottawa looking for a building downtown and speculation about how Melnyk feels about losing money. And you've got the Islanders putting up a building in Belmont, and the question of whether or not the franchise they put on the ice when they get to the Belmont Park is going to be any good or not. And that's a valid question. They both have concerns in net. They both have concerns on the blue line, and they both have concerns with depth. So this is the happy cup. This is the cup between two teams that should be abundantly happy with their standing in the league. I can't think of any other way to frame it. It's a game between two teams that are not anywhere near the playoffs, and I'm not sure how much worse it gets before it gets better. Next up, Pittsburgh. 43, 27 and 6 overall. They're 6-2 and 2 in their last 10. They won their last game. They're in against the Detroit Red Wings, who are 27, 38 and 11, but they're 1 and 9 in their last 10, and they've lost their last 3 in a row, including last night in Montreal. Pittsburgh's 15, 19 and 4 on the road, which is problematic. If they struggle on the road and they end up having to play a series where, I mean, likely isn't in the first round they're going to be the road team, but second round they definitely could be. That could be problematic. Even though it looks like they'd play Washington. If they were playing on the road in the second round, it would definitely be Washington. And it's hard for me to say that as a guy who supported Washington for years. That, well, it'll be hard for Pittsburgh to win in Washington. Not in the playoffs. Detroit at home is 14, 15, and 8. They've been very accommodating. Matt Murray starting for Pittsburgh is probably going to be Jimmy Howard for Detroit. Right now, Pittsburgh is second in the division, and they're 5 points behind Washington. So if Pittsburgh wants to hold on to hope that they could challenge Washington for first place, they need to win this game. We are up to 76 games into the season, and for all the heart talk, Evgeny Malkin has had a pretty good season. It's been a big part of the reason why Pittsburgh is where they are. Big part of the reason. And he may come in out of nowhere and be the guy who steals it. So, Boston fans, we like talk about what Marchand's been able to do when he's been in the lineup. 80 points in 60 games is excellent. But Malkin genuinely could end up with a Rocket Richard. It's unlikely, but he could. He's still mathematically in it. And I guess everybody's mathematically in it if somebody can score 40 goals in a game. But Pittsburgh needs this win, and they need a big game from Malkin to do it. Because while Detroit's been in the tank, and they are in the tank, it's a trap game. I need to start putting Ekbars on the board again, don't I? I'll do that tomorrow. I will definitely do that tomorrow. But we'll see what happens with these two teams. But Pittsburgh's one I'm watching going into the playoffs because I'm not sure if they have enough to three-peat. But the fact that they're in the playoffs again, and we're even talking about three-peat, is insane. Boston. 47, 17, and 10 overall. 6-2 and 2 in their last 10. They've won their last 2. They're going into Winnipeg. 46, 19, and 10 overall. 7-2 and 1 in their last 10. They've won their last 5. Boston on the road's 22, 10, and 5. Excellent on the road. Winnipeg at home, 29, 7, and 2. They're excellent at home. Bring it on. Boston's 2 points behind Tampa for first in the division. I never thought I'd see the day that happened. Not this season, anyways. I'm pretty sure there was a point this season where Boston was more than 10 points behind Tampa. And here we are. And for Winnipeg, they're second in the division. And they're 9 points ahead of Minnesota. Hellebuck's been confirmed as a starter. I'd be very surprised if Winnipeg doesn't win this game. But at the same time, Boston's starting to get healthy. Bergeron's back. Krug's back. I'm waiting on my boy Charlie to get back in the lineup. And, a healthy Bruins team could be extremely dangerous in the playoffs, but we'll see. I'm still cautiously optimistic. So I'm happy with what they've done. I'm happy with where they are. But do I believe that they're cup the cup contenders? Sure, I'll give that now. Are they going to be favorites? Not for me. I would still take Tampa. Even if Boston finishes ahead of Tampa, I would still mildly favor Tampa over Boston in the 7-game series. But we may very well find out. And if Boston has home ice, that could be huge. And for Winnipeg, it's a game that really ideally, I mean, if they win this and Nashville loses their game, they're only 3 points back. Or 4 if Nashville loses in overtime. But it's a big game for Winnipeg. They're all big games for Winnipeg. And this is the best season they've ever had. So, kudos to them. And Winnipeg, we may very well be looking at a Winnipeg Jets team that surprises us all again in the playoffs. Because most people are taking Winnipeg to get eliminated in the first or second round, depending on how things fall for them and who they end up playing. But, if they get out of that second round, if they get past, say, Nashville in the second round, Minnesota in the first, I don't know who beats them out of the Pacific. Probably nobody. And then once you get to the Stanley Cup final, all bets are off. So I will definitely give them that. Minnesota. Speaking of whom, Minnesota's 42, 24, and 9 overall. They're 6-2 and 2 in their last 10. They lost their last game. They're in against the Nashville Predators, who are 48-16-11 overall. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10, but they've lost their last 3. Minnesota's 17-18-1 on the road. Nashville's 25-8-4 at home. I did state around halfway through the year, if Minnesota can get their road record to 500, they have a really good shot at making the playoffs. Well, they can get it to 500 tonight, and they can do it with a win in Nashville, and Nashville doesn't look quite as unbeatable as they did a couple weeks ago. I would not be surprised to see Minnesota win this, only because Minnesota needs the points, and Nashville isn't really in a desperate situation yet. Yeah, they're 5 points ahead of Winnipeg. There's only 6 games left. And making up a 5-point difference with 6 games left, or a 3-point difference with 5 games left even, it's really difficult because of the amount of 3-point games you have in the NHL. And, yes, Winnipeg can beat Nashville. Winnipeg is at the very least a good match for Nashville. But I still think Nashville wins the division, and then we'll see what happens in the playoffs. Playoffs can be quite a different beast. Remember, Nashville was the number 2 wild card last year, and they went to the Stanley Cup final and pretty darn near beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, if you don't include the games in Pittsburgh where bad things happened. And for Minnesota, they're only 3 points ahead of Colorado. So they're third in the division. They look good, but they're only 3 points ahead of Colorado, and they're only 5 points ahead of missing the playoffs. So they cannot afford to let off the gas at all. They have to continue to play at the top of their game, or they're going to be in deep trouble. They really can't afford losses at all. They just can't. San Jose. The Sharks are 44-23-9 overall. They're 9-1 in their last 10, and they've won 8 in a row. That win in a shootout last night over Chicago. Gutsy win. They're in against the St. Louis Blues, who are 42-28-5. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10, and they've won 5 in a row. Jake Allen's been confirmed as a starter for St. Louis, although Carter Hutton apparently is okay. He has stated that he's ready to come back. San Jose's second. They're 6 points behind Vegas, so the odds of them catching Vegas are extremely slim. But it's worth mentioning since mathematically they're still available to do so. And for St. Louis, right now they're out of the playoffs. They are 1 point behind the second wild card, 2 points behind the first wild card. They're 23-15 at home, and San Jose's 20-12-6 on the road. Both teams on huge winning streaks. If San Jose wins this one, they've basically clinched it already. I can't see them falling out. They got 97 points. But a win by San Jose would be extremely problematic for the Blues. If the Blues lose this one in regulation, then they sort of lose that game in hand argument, and so St. Louis has to come out and play hard. This is my game of the night candidate right here. 2 winning streaks clash. One team desperately needs to win to make the playoffs, and will have a chip on their shoulder, and the other one is on an 8-game winning streak, and they're going to want to push that to 9. And San Jose and St. Louis met in the playoffs as recently as 2 springs ago, so there may be some animosity crop up in this game based on familiarity. Remember, familiarity does breed contempt in hockey and in sports in general. I would favor St. Louis to win this one, only because St. Louis has this never say die attitude right now in their game, but it's not going to be easy. I anticipate another low scoring game, sort of like the one that St. Louis had with Columbus the other night, where they beat Columbus 2-1. I would expect that kind of game again. Very disciplined game being played by St. Louis. Very strong game being played by St. Louis. And we'll see if it's a winning game tonight at home against San Jose. Definitely it favors St. Louis being at home, but San Jose has been excellent on the road lately. Next up, the Flyers, 38-25-13. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10. They've lost their last game. They're in against the Stars, who are 38-30-8 overall, 1-7-2 in their last 10, and they've lost 8 in a row, including their most recent humiliation, which was a 4-1 loss at home against the Vancouver Canucks. The Stars' home record is now dropped to 24 wins, 12 losses, 3 overtime losses. The road record for Philly is 19-12-7, so they have an excellent road record. They are the number 1 wild card. They are tied with Columbus in points. So if Columbus loses and Philly wins, they jump back into third, right behind these guys. And where they stand right now, they would play Washington in the playoffs. Dallas is done. Okay? Dallas mathematically isn't out. I think they're 6 points back. I didn't even put it on the board because I don't care. Oh, yeah, I did too. Right above their home record. They're 6 points behind the second wild card. It just doesn't matter. They're not getting there. By the end of tonight, they should be further than that out of the playoffs. And they should be mathematically eliminated about as easily as the Flames were. And it's sad because in both Calgary and Dallas, this was supposed to be a big year. This was supposed to be something different. Halfway through the year, both teams looked like they were going to bring something different to their fan bases, and disappointment has followed. For Philly, it's been quite different. They get off to this sort of unlucky start, and the record didn't necessarily reflect how well they were playing. Then they go into this huge losing streak, and it looks like everybody should get fired, and everything's going to fall apart. Then they go on a huge winning streak. And since then, it's been kind of 500 hockey, and they're sort of meandering their way into the playoffs. And I'm not sure what the Flyers are. Are they the team of the winning streak, the team of the losing streak, or somewhere in between? And are they going to be good for a 7-game series against whoever they face in the first round? I think of all the teams in the East, Philly for me is the one that it's hardest for me to peg down as to whether or not they're in for a long playoff run. Other teams I can get a better read on, but Philly I have no read on whatsoever. Dallas, I got a good read on. They're not very good. They're just not very good. Columbus, 42-29-5 overall. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They lost their last game against St. Louis. They're in against the Oilers, who are 34-36-6 overall. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10. They lost their last game. The Columbus Blue Jackets are 17-17-3 on the road. Edmonton 17-17-4 at home. Very accommodating home teams in Western Canada, whether it's Calgary, Vancouver, or Edmonton. You'll recognize our teams because they're all out of the playoffs. And that's a big part of it. Bobrovsky's starting tonight for Columbus, who start the night third, 3 points behind Pittsburgh. So they'll be watching what the Penguins and Flyers do tonight. Cassian's supposed to be back for the Oilers. We'll see if that gives them any kind of a spark. I haven't heard yet who's going to be starting for them. I would bet on Talbot. They called up Brossoit. Maybe they give Brossoit a start. It's not like it really matters a whole lot. The Oilers are playing like a team that wants to make up for their really rough year so far and give their fans hope for next year. Columbus, on the other hand, playing some of the best hockey they have this season. I don't know that I view Columbus as any kind of a contender at this stage. They've had an impressive record over their last 12 games, and it's definitely got them in a position where they shouldn't have a problem making the playoffs. What they do in them could be a completely different topic. So when people look at power rankings, and I see, oh, you've got Columbus too high. Not based on their winning streak, I don't. Now, if we're talking about who's going to win in the playoffs, then it becomes a bit of a different story. And the funny thing is with my power rankings, I'm going to continue doing them through the playoffs, but I'm going to have to reseed everybody at the start of the playoffs based on who they're playing, and in my opinion, the likelihood they're going to get through the playoffs. And then after that, I'll continue to update them based on where everybody is in the playoffs. The teams from 17 through 31 would then be frozen. The only time that those teams would move around up or down on the chart would be if a trade takes place or signing takes place, and we feel like it actually changes the complexion of that team going forward. Other than that, everybody gets frozen when they get eliminated from the playoffs as well. And it'll be quite interesting to see where do I put Columbus right now? Where do they sit? Is Columbus a team that if they play Pittsburgh today can knock Pittsburgh out? Can Bobrovsky come through in the playoffs and knock anybody else out? And he's going to have to answer that question this year, I would think. Next up, and finally, last but not least, oh God, Anaheim 39-24-11. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. They won their last game. Vancouver's 27-40-9. They're 2-8 in their last 10, and they've won 2 out of 3, including their last game, which was a win over Dallas. Anaheim 17-14-8 on the road. Vancouver's 12-18-6 at home. They're terrible at home. Anaheim's third in the division. They're 6 points behind San Jose. They're not catching San Jose. They're tied with LA in points, and they've got a game in hand on LA, and this is that game. If they lose this game in regulation in Vancouver, which is normally a dream, for Vancouver fans it would be a dream that they beat Anaheim at home in regulation. But if they lose this one in regulation, they then drop behind the Kings and drop pretty much right out of the playoffs. It's a strange setup that's going on, but this is, again, and I mentioned this before, Anaheim has less regulation and overtime wins than anybody else, and that's the first tiebreaker as to who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. So Anaheim has to win this one in regulation, because if they don't, then Vancouver picks up at least a point, and I'll be upset if Vancouver picks up a point. I don't want to see them get ahead of Ottawa. And I have another team that they're ahead of. Because again, and I've said this before, because people keep saying, well, you know, the Canucks aren't going to win the lottery. Oh, I know that. I'm well aware the Canucks are winning the lottery. It's just every time they move up in the standings, they move further down in the draft. So they're actually making it harder on themselves going forward. So instead of drafting a guy like a Zadina or a Svechnikov, we might be looking at one of the second-tier guys who may be an excellent player, but may not be what Svechnikov or Zadina could be to the team. So I notice I'm not even mentioning Rasmus Dahlin. I'm not even mentioning him. So, anyways, there you go. There's your 9 games for tonight. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Let me know your winners, and I'll talk to you again soon.